Morning, I'm Chamberlain Oso.
Indeed, a wonderful Monday morning to you. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf. Welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Hey, look who's here. Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Yeah, chilly weather as well. Just gearing up for the festive season. Well, there's still business in the business district in Abuja, and I imagine several other parts of the city. Up until, well, I think traffic is actually thinning out, though, guys. From what I saw this morning, almost nostalgic, I might add, because making you begin to feel Christmas sick, anything like that.
Christmas sick.
Okay, maybe Christmassy.
Yes, Christmassy might be more like it.
Okay.
Certainly not sick of Christmas. Maybe sick wanting Christmas.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Because
you know when you're homesick.
You
want to go there.
You can actually smell it in the air in Abuja. The weather is nice, it's dry, and you already have that brownie feeling you get. I mean, it's all over the city when the trees begin to dry out and shed their leaves. And the mornings are really cold and all you want to do is snuggle in bed. You know that Christmas is here in the Federal Capital Territory and in many parts of the country that already feel this season. You know, yesterday night I was reading a book to my daughters titled I Smell Christmas in the Air. Yes, and the book had all manner of imagery of the things that people usually smell. It smells like burnt dry mango leaves. It smells like mommy's fried chin-chin. So I started to ask my children, what does Christmas smell like in our own house? Oh, well, thank God. My younger daughter was very generous, you know. But hey, it is what it is. I'm sure you have your own fond memories of Christmas. And for those who do not have, well, I do know that Christmas does spell, you know, a time of not so happy memories for some people who have lost loved ones, people who, you know, maybe encountered accidents, etc. Still, we hope that the joy that generally this season brings, you know, will find its way somehow to lift you up. But it is what it is. It's a Monday morning, and as Chimley was saying, there's 2 weeks of business left in this district. We will be seeing very soon, you know, activities going on in that particular area. Ayo, what is it like in Lagos? I hope it's still bubbling. Can you smell Christmas anywhere around you there?
Trust me, we always say that Lagos is the city that never sleeps. Don't mind Chamberlain Mouth, where he can't forget that there's only Ewa going in Lagos. And please, you and I know, Mouth, where Ewa going originated from. It's in Lagos. So
mind him.
it originated from Lagos. Well, maybe neighboring city, but hey, it is in Lagos. So just so you know. And I mean, just talking about your kids, I remember a few days ago, my kids just said, two of them just said, hey, Dad, I wish there was snow in Nigeria. I said, sweetheart, you have no idea what you are looking for. Please don't ask for snow in Nigeria, because you can't even live with it. Your mommy won't even allow you to get near anything cold anyway. So there you have it. But you know what I mean, certainly Lagos is bubbly. Lagos is that city, as we say, that never sleeps. I mean, just name the city. So, well, this is a very, very beautiful view. And as you said, Lagos also has its 2 weeks of business in the places where they close. In the cities in the businesses where they don't close, such as the one you both are on right now, the station never sleeps. So, there you
Well, yeah, you can say that again, Ayo. Even in my dreams, I see it. So, when you sleep and dream, you just go, oh God, what's going on here? But you know, I don't know, I can almost guess how, okay, maybe not this time, Lagos about the expressway, that Christmas week is always
jam-packed.
Always, yeah.
Oh,
but the road is done, I understand. So
yeah, so we're hoping that the traffic will be easier.
Yeah, except for indiscipline, the way people use
drive. Yeah, and I hope there'll be fewer accidents. I mean,
yeah, I think we need to also
no accidents. You know?
Because it's the way we use the road, so we need to talk to ourselves as well. Be a little more considerate for the person who also is behind you, or who also don't just park and block everywhere. You don't care what happens next. No, you know, it is us obeying those little things out there on the street, that is what makes society function better. Think about it.
And that's a very important rhetoric there, Chamberlain, if you don't mind me butting in. That's a very, very important information you just put out there. Security officials, road traffic people are going to be all over the place, right? Ensuring that we do the right thing. You know, I shared some information with you yesterday about a video making the rounds in Lagos. I don't know if you guys have seen it. In Lekki in particular, where a lady was apprehended by officials of the Road Safety Commission, and she was beating up an officer. Beating the officer, slapping the officer. I don't know what's going to happen to that lady. I sincerely hope that the law will take its full course, because the officers had to be telling the their colleague that was being beaten by this lady, just endure it, endure it, endure it. And here is a situation where we're still negotiating whether the FRSC should be bearing arms or not. So in this kind of situation, if it was an arms-bearing agency, would she have the audacity to do that? Anyway, as I said, we just hope that the law will take its full course. So we have that responsibility, as you said, Chamberlain, to ensure that everyone does what is right on the roads, not just for your sake, but for the sake of other people whom you claim to love.
Yeah, we need to do that as much as we can. But let's take you through some of the dailies this morning, and let's see if they are still going to be talking about this tax bill 2 weeks to Christmas. But I know there are several other headlines. I'll take us through them.
Although tax reform bills are still a thing on the front pages this morning, the headlines are almost as diverse as the papers. But let's begin with the Daily Times newspaper. Tax bills assess human rights impact. Serap urges National Assembly. The details on the inside pages of the paper this morning. Blueprint has tax reform bills crucial. Democracy in action, as according to Idris Mbagudu. Nigeria needs reforms in all sectors. That's from Gumi. Lawmakers against document ignorance. That's coming from Shehu Sani. A related story is on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct. Economic reforms. Tinubu still in Nigerians' goodwill. Will be president till 2031, according to the SGF. Isn't it a little too early? But hey, the details on the inside pages of the paper. Business Day. Cardoso's first year sees Naira rally amid stubborn inflation. Check the details of that story on the inside pages. Vanguard newspaper. How non-appointment of ambassadors is hurting Nigeria. That's coming from Envoys. Bilateral agreements, MOUs, face hiccups. Embassies operate without ambassadors for 15 months. Tinubu gets list, may announce nominees this week, while experienced, credible people must be appointed. That's coming from ex-ambassadors. The details on page 5. New Telegraph. Defections. APC decimates opposition ahead 2027. Ruling party accused of wooing opponents with return tickets. More PDP LP NAS members planning to dump parties. The details are on pages 9 and 10 of the New Telegraph this morning. The Abuja Inquirer has taxation. FCT IRS targets 10,000 high earners, gives 2-week ultimatum on payment. The details, of course, you'll find on the inside pages of the paper this morning. But look at the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Tax reform bills. States eye 180% hike in VAT earnings amid push for fiscal federalism. Some will say it's about to go down. Well, the details on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. Nigerian Tribune has PDP chair, pro-Damagum forces plan takeover of BOT. Other stakeholders mount pressure on David Mark to take over in February. 67 BOT members face uncertainty over plot. Wabara under pressure over stance on tenure of acting chairman. States have power to nominate tenured BOT members, as coming from the National Publicity Secretary. The details on page 4 of the paper. The front page of This Nigeria has this one. Airfare, word of words. Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Council, Air Peace, Aviation Minister fight over alleged prohibitive costs of flights. The details you'll find on the inside pages of the paper today. Daily Trust. Dry season farming suffers as dams infrastructure collapses. Oh dear. Farmers resort to boreholes and wells. The details continue on the inside pages of Daily Trust. Daily Independent has a fairly unpleasant one. Bleak Christmas as banks hold cash. Analysts ask CBN to act fast before festive period. Find the details continue on the inside pages of the paper. And these are the papers we have for you today.
Well, it's certainly quite a lot to read on the front pages this morning. And who can miss the elections that has taken place in Ghana, producing without drama John Dramani Mahama as president-elect of our West African neighbors. Congratulations to them. I mean, Ghana was the one that set the tone in the West African region of presidents taking over, incumbents being ousted. And at least they tend to, show that they can do this democracy thing without bitterness. So we saw in Ghana the example of presidents conceding defeat. And much later, it was something I was expected of Big Brother Nigeria, to also to learn lessons from, its West African brother, Ghana. And thankfully, President Goodluck Jonathan put us on the map of people, who have also learned to play the game of democracy. But who says that when you lose today, you cannot win tomorrow? That's what we've now seen with the return of President-elect John Dramani Mahama, who is now the President-elect of Ghana in just the latest elections concluded. He was rejected a few years ago. He ran, I think he ran for one term, 2012 to 2016, and he did not come back in the 2016 elections. But hey, it's 2024 now, and Ghanaians say, yeah, we think we want you back. They're currently in difficult situations. The economy is very tough in Ghana. Young people are looking for jobs, etc. And they've been unhappy in general with the party in power. And as such, they've shown their displeasure by showing them the door. And now Mahama has his job back.
Oh, yeah.
Will he be able to pull it off for the people of Ghana? We'll wait and see. We certainly wish him the best. And we congratulate Ghanaians on the success of their elections. Chimling.
I'm not sure we want to have elections in December because it's so rancorous. Elections here.
Who wants that bitterness, right?
Yeah, not in December.
But they've shown that it can be done.
Yeah,
I mean, they were very mature about it, and look what they've done.
Way to go. Part of what we always talk about, that the country, businesses shouldn't be on hold because we want to have elections. So no. And besides, look, about this tax reform bill, I just think that because I see that FCT IRS is beginning to make move to tax individuals earning over 25 million naira annually. States, I think you mentioned some of those states who are also considering very massive hikes in VAT and tax. But I think above all else, they should also remember that, look, you have to try as much as you can, come up with policies that could ensure that production thrives in your state. You have to put in environments that will make a lot of production happen, because if you don't, you will always, there's a limit to what you can do in terms of taxation. And so you can only tax them if they're productive. So that, I think they should learn to understand that if your state isn't viable, you have yourself to blame, state executives. And above all else, there's a lot of conversation about the tax. Yes, ideas should contend, and probably the right ones or superior ones take the day. But we also need to ensure, I mean, the other day you heard in the news, one person, 753 houses, which might be just one of the several assets or whatever it is they've traced to the individual. Look, we can't keep talking about all of this hike in tax of all shapes and sizes and forms, and then some persons in some office begins to act like a thin god and takes all these monies and fritter these monies away. Look, you know what they say, woe betide that public official. If you do all of this, you know what they say in China? Death penalty for anyone who is caught stealing what? How much? So I think we may come to that position in this country at some point, because all of this conversation about taxes, people are working hard for them. It's not free money for people to go and share. So at the end of the day, if you share it, you will meet us there. Ayo.
Forward, they say. Ayo. I don't know what Chamberlain is working now, but...
Can you hear me, Chamberlain?
Because...
Yes, I can hear you now.
Good. I think I'm going to stick with you for a bit on that story. It's on the front page of the Guardian newspaper, actually. States eye 180% hike in VAT earnings amid push for fiscal federalism. You know, part of the question we asked last week when we were speaking with Senator Morrow was, is this an instrument for fiscal federalism, this tax reform bills? And from what we are seeing on the front page of the Guardian newspaper, it seems that it is now becoming mainstream, that is part of the initiative. And I'm glad that if you look at the front page of the Guardian newspaper, the data on the front page is humongous. The VAT growth trend has increased since the increase to 7.5% VAT from 2021, which was just 2.07 trillion naira, to 2024, which is 6.36 trillion naira, and quite a number of data on the front page. And as you said, Chamberlain, I'm looking forward to a way where we can monitor not just the incomes to the states, but the measurement of impact, accountability. There has to be a mechanism for that, because this is what will encourage people to pay taxes. I remember, I think it was in the Fashola days, some people said that they actually went to the tax office and said, we want to pay taxes. Why? Because according to the state government at the time, they will see a sign that says taxpayers' money at work. And so people kept taking their money to the states, to the state governments, to do more for the people. So it's, as you said, Chamberlain, no, it is not free money. It is money earned by the people who want to contribute to their nation. And with all of these initiatives making the rounds now, what is the monitoring mechanism, or what will be the monitoring mechanism for accountability by the states when the incomes begin to come? Because automatically it means there is a likelihood that there will be a drop in earnings to the federal government, while the states will earn more. So how do we ensure that they do more with the more that they earn? Because now they earn a little more, and we're seeing what we're seeing. So that's my take this morning. Meantime, let's take a break, and when we return, our conversations begin. Just stay with us.
Welcome. All right. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. This is the season where, well, it's not just this season, several other seasons, but particularly now you expect a lot of food all over the place. So we'll find out whether or not we should get our hopes up. We're joined by Senator Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, who is the Minister of State for Agriculture. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, good morning, Chamberlain. Good morning, Markwe.
Yeah, so...
good morning to Ayo over here in Lagos.
Yeah, so we know you had some trips with the president some time ago to Brazil, and you did say the last time you came that certain things are in the works and will yield results much later. So let's start off with you telling us, where are we now in the scheme of things?
Well, it's a lot of work. Okay. And, you know, whenever you meet a system that is down, you need to get it up. And you're not just to get it up, but you need to get it to do the work so that it will respond to the demands of the citizens. For us in the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, it's no longer news. We all knew last year the president declared a state of emergency because of the nature of the food security situation. We were not doing very well. We had very bad numbers. And as part of the renewed hope agenda, of course, food security is in the front burner. And like you very well know, for the agricultural sector, because it's the mainstay of Nigeria's economy, it's expected to also play a critical role in the economic growth or diversification of the economy, as it were. And then also the aspect of poverty eradication, and of course, engendering an inclusive, process as we work. So what I would say here is that there is quite a lot we have been doing in the ministry, tackling all the major issues that have led us to where we were. Because if you look at it, people will say Nigeria has huge potentials, but people will also tell you we're not going to eat potentials. And that is true. Nobody eats potentials. So what we need to do is to do the work. And I think the vision of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in this direction is quite commendable. First, we looked at how rudimentary our farmers have been, in terms of their operational tools. So one of the first things he has done is to say, let's look at mechanization. So in this respect, we have very robust mechanization program, starting from the Greener Hope Initiative mechanization program. We have the John Deere, we have the Belarus, and right now again we have the Greener Imperative project, which is coming from Brazil. It's one of the things that I think during the G20 and the sideline, some activities took place on that, and we have an MOU, and we are working to see how we can get that. The president has given a marching order for the Greener Imperative project to come on stream January next year. So we just had a meeting last week to look at all the things that are on the ground in terms of milestones that should be achieved to get us there. So haven't tackled the mechanization because we know that is a problem and we need to get something off the ground. And we are hopeful that maybe by the time we get to the next year rainy season, definitely a lot will have happened for these programs to begin now to be in the field. That is one. Two, we also believe that there are aspects of Nigerian farmers in terms of their productivity. We have low yields. And because we have low yields, no matter what farmers will do, their productivity will not be that much. And if you look at the challenge of climate change, increasing urbanization, making it impossible for farmlands to remain, there is pressure on farmland. So what it means, the whole world is actually saying that given the challenges of climate change and all the other things that are impacting on agriculture, we need to increase our yields so that productivity per hectare can be increased. So if you are getting 2 tons, we should try to see how can you get 4 tons, because that would mean, having more production. So we are looking at that also. And within that context, let me say the key issues we are looking at are seeds. The president has said in his renewed hope agenda, plant the right seed, feed an entire nation. And so we are looking critically at that. We have revived our seed planning system, where the research institutes, the National Seed Council, and seed producers are going to meet. And right now, because we have the National Agricultural Development Fund, which is an intervention fund to tackle the pain points in the sector, they have come into the fray. So there's going to be, some changes that we're going to, put in place to make sure that high improved seeds are going to be made available to seed producing companies who will be able to now do the multiplication. Because to get to certified seed, which is what farmers need, takes certain stages.
I'm sorry, are those GMO seeds?
No. We're talking about our improved seeds. You see, when you say GMO, I think is a technical term that when we want to discuss that will take a longer, time. I don't want us to derail from the major.
So at the moment, none of those GMO seeds.
Well, there are. You see, GMO seeds can be produced, but they have to go through processes, and they have to go through certain stages. Because one of the things in GMO is that you want to talk about what we call substantial equivalence. In essence, substantially, when you use it, is it causing any problem? So you need time to be able to verify that. So that is there. We are trying our best, and we have the regulatory framework for containment because you don't just come in with GMO seeds and just go to the field. You must have a controlled environment, and the regulatory body has been there, the biosafety regulatory agency is there to make sure trials that are ongoing are being done in line with the GMO regulatory framework. So I know Nigerians are always afraid of the fact that maybe no, the quantum of GMO seed is nothing, to worry about. It's so negligible in terms of what is even, because these are all at trial levels. So I don't think there is anything to fear. What we are dealing with right now are improved seeds, hybrid seeds that have been developed by our research institutes and that should be produced at the level of breeder seed. So that
what are the components of these hybrid seeds?
Hybrid seed is just saying that you have two varieties of maize and that one maize has a better, maybe disease resistance. So when you bring the two together, you now have something that comes out of the two parents. That is a hybrid.
Well, the reason why people
the other one that you talk about, GMO, is done through laboratory manipulation, where you take a trait, you single out a particular trait in one particular crop. Maybe, for example, farmers are suffering from disease resistance, the pest and diseases. So if you take a variety that has resistance to pest, so there must be something that encode for it, that is, there is a genetic mark that it has. So you take that one and take to one that has maybe high production, and then you match the two together. And then you now come up with a variety that has been genetically modified. So that modification is to the extent of inserting the trait that confer the new one you are trying to have resistance to a particular pest or diseases. That is how genetic, GMOs are done. And I don't think, for me, all I know there is that this is a scientific process, and if the right steps are followed, and if it is done by our own scientists, the fear of maybe certain things being done or added will all be gone. And I think if you look at the potentials, honestly speaking, we just have no option but to begin to spend more money for our scientists to do the same. Like you said, we just came back from Brazil. And as far as GMO...
Sure, to do the same with GMO, right?
Yeah, we need to spend money in the country. Because you see, nobody will develop its own variety and just bring it free of charge to you. Because it's money being spent. And I'm saying it's a technology. We know that, yes, usually when any technology comes, people have apprehension and the like. But there is a process. And I will tell you that even well before we get into, the mix of having GMOs, the first thing you need to do is to have the regulatory framework. And gladly, Nigeria has put in place the regulatory framework. So the regulatory framework is there to guide whatever you're going to do. Usually, depending on what you are doing, you have to apply. And you need to also show the confined environment where you are going to do the work. Because you see, even for the people who are doing it, you need a confined environment, because if you don't, pollen from other crops can come and pollute what you are doing. So it's done under confined environment. It is when it works and we know it's helping that we're able to do that. But let me get back to one very important point. You said we just came back from Brazil. Yes. One of the things we saw based on the directive of Mr. President, when we got there, we actually went to a seed company. And curiously, because of this controversy we are having back on, in country about GMOs and whatnot, we asked the question. And as far as they are concerned, they said clearly, there is no controversy around GMO in Brazil. Because they developed it themselves. And that more than, 80% of what they plant are all GMOs. That's why they are getting the high tonnage.
Wow.
And because you see, per hectare, if you can make 30 tons of a particular commodity, maybe for example, let's take rice. If there is a genetically modified rice, maybe if you see, why are you even having GMOs? Why you are having GMOs is to solve the problem farmers are facing. Usually our farmers are facing the problem of disease, pest, and at the same time, maybe even the productivity, low yield. Instead of getting, maybe the variety they're having is having only 4 tons. Now, if you are able to get a variety that can produce 10 tons, you would like to have that quality. So how do you do that? The fastest way to do that is through that. Because if you are going to do the conventional breeding, it will take you maybe like 7-10 years. So if you do GMO, maybe it will take you 2, 3, 4 years. And I think that is the advantage. And if you are doing that, you are guided by all the cautions that you need to put in place.
Well, you do know that there will be plenty of work to do in terms of the campaign around education, because they are valid fears, and the fears that we're talking about today are not, they didn't come from Nigeria. It came from places where these GMOs have been tried, people linking them to, health complications down the line, talking about cancer, for instance, or that is even in the area of health. Now, in the area of the seeds themselves, people talking about how, you are now beholden to the seeds producers because you cannot keep, what farmers used to do is keep the seeds from a previous harvest.
Farmers save seeds.
Exactly. But now farmers will understand that they might not be able to save seeds again. They will constantly have to buy
It's not in all cases.
These are some of the fears.
Yeah, I think one of the things people should understand is that there is what we call GURTs, that is genetic use restriction technologies. Those technologies are specifically designed to lock something in which the man is having maybe the chemicals or solution that until you apply, that will not open. That is the one that they are talking about. And I think everywhere in the world, people don't want to encourage that, because that is denying the rights of farmers. It's a very big issue, and I understand that. As a scientist, I understand that, and I know it is a bad thing, because if you have the genetic use restriction technology, it means it is restricting the reuse. That's what you are talking about. That GURT technology is not what any country like Nigeria will want to support. But we believe GMO, the technology itself, is helpful to our cause, where if there is pest and disease, we can bring in a genetic trait that confer resistance to the crop varieties that we are having. And like I said, these are things that are done under so many regulatory processes.
Well, some people will say that we've never.
But that's not what we are dealing with right now.
Exactly.
What we are dealing with right now, like I said, is improved varieties of crops, and we have quite a number of them. And that is what we are now saying, our research institute, as we revive our seed planning system, should make all of these things available, so that we have so many seed companies that will take them up and they will be able to, multiply them.
Well, you mentioned quite a number of programs that the president has, initiated and you are supposed to be implementing under the Ministry of Agriculture. You talked about Greener Hope, Greener Imperative, Belarus, etc. You say some of these are supposed to kickstart next year. I believe that this is, even though I think we're leaving the harvest season now, we should be entering the dry.
We are right now, actually, right now as we speak, the National Agricultural Growth Scheme, Agro Pocket Project, has kickstarted for the dry season 2024-2025.
So dry season farming has started?
Yes, has started.
So harvest season is over?
Harvest season for some is still on. Different people are harvesting at different times, and so harvest is still on.
How would you rate our productivity from the rainy season harvest? So far, so good. Has the Ministry of Agriculture been able to restock? Because there's plenty of controversy around our silos, because federal government had to release grains over and over again, and even around that period, there was controversy as to whether there was anything in the silos, etc. But right now that we're in the harvest season, how has it been restocking the silos? Are we seeing, what exactly has the harvest season brought forward? Because some people are saying the harvest season has been poor. Climate change is really affecting farmers. No. We are also seeing how floods, nearly ruined a lot of the things that farmers were expecting. I'm sure you must have heard some of that.
Well, I will not be here to speak out of the blues.
Yes.
I will be speaking to the facts on the ground. We have a process, we have a system. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security has the National Agricultural Research Extension Liaison Services, NARLS, that is based in the Ahmadu Bello University. They have the national mandate of conducting what we call annual performance surveys. So they do that for the wet season, and then they do that for the dry season. So they've done that of the wet season in October. Usually they do it around September, October. So they were in the field all over the country. Now, what they were out to do is to find out what is the production like. And I will say with all satisfaction that despite the challenges of insecurity that has reduced the available land, because of the other strategies we have taken of saying, look, let's look at other institutional farms, let's look at other vacant lands that are within, urban centers and the like. Honestly, what they reported to us was what they call a marginal increase of about 1.6%. Now, what that means is that marginal increase must have been responsible for covering the loss in the areas where insecurity has prevented people. But at the same time also, some people have gone back to the land because the insecurity, our security agencies have done some very great jobs. In some places, farmers have been able to go back to their field, and all of these things were reported. Overall, there was a report of a marginal increase in many of the crops, especially our staples. The only crop that did not witness a marginal increase was millet. And this report was presented, and apart from that also, they reported increased use of improved seeds, which I talked about earlier because of what we have done to revive our seed planning system. Now, are we satisfied? Definitely not. But based on the efforts we have put in place, I think it shows a positive direction for us. And all we need to do, and we are doing, is to add momentum, to do things better. And I think we are doing that in many respects.
It's certainly not translating to lower prices, is it?
Well, you see, when you talk about price, remember that there are so many other forces that may even be external to the agricultural sector. So I think the issue of price is definitely something that has to do with both what we have, production, but you remember when production started coming out and products started coming out, of course, price dropped. But is that sufficient to maintain the price? Definitely no, because there are other contending macroeconomic issues. And I think usually that is what we need to deal with.
Okay, could you respond briefly to some of these reports we have here? Today's daily reporting, dry season farming is suffering a huge infrastructural collapse. They say farmers are resorting to boreholes and wells, according to an investigation by the trust.
Well, let me say this has been an old trend that has been in place. And of course, if somebody is reporting that it's still happening, I won't fault that. But then what is on the ground? That is where I will come back to. Like I said, our target for the National Agricultural Growth Scheme, Agro Pocket, last year it was 120. But I want to report with full satisfaction that having done that, based on what we have gained and all the changes that we have put in place, we are having a target of 280,000 hectares. And states that are well prepared are ready to take that plunge on it. Jigawa alone is targeting 100,000 and even more. So what I will say is that, yes, I've read the report, I've seen what it is, but then, headlines are what they are. As far as I'm concerned, many of the farmers that we are dealing with are actually having access to water. Some are actually having access to the same borehole. Because what is important when you say boreholes, of course, boreholes, industrial boreholes are also used for irrigation. And I think what is important is that are farmers having access to water? Yes, many of them are having access to water. And we realize that the irrigation facility is the area of challenge. And I think Mr. President has rightly captured what needs to be done. Because like I said, we make a very decaying system. He has already ordered the Federal Ministry of Water Resources to carry out integrity tests across all the dams. That is ongoing. At the same time, we have a joint working group between the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security and Water Resources to identify the lands that will be made available that have all the facilities for the dry season farming. And those are the ones we are using. And you agree with me, if you look at our potential of over 3 million hectares, of course, we have moved from 120 to 280. It shows that there is progress. And what we are looking at is, if we are able to do all the corrective actions arising from the evaluation of the integrity of all of the dams, we are expecting to increase the available area that farmers can use for irrigation.
Let me also get your comment on this report, which was published yesterday by the World Food Programme. It says economic hardship, climate crisis, and violence in Northeast projected to push 33.1 million Nigerians into food insecurity in 2025.
These are the projections we always have. And when the projections are made, they will be made at a particular point in time. But within that period, and when these actions are expected, are we folding our arms? No, we're not folding our arms as a country. We are working very hard, like I said. We are increasing our outlook in terms of the dry season farming this year. The people on rice, we have done that of wheat, which we have flagged off. Remember, for the first time also, we are actually bringing on stream states that have the potential for both dry season and wet season. And these states are Cross River, Taraba, and Plateau State. Because of the plateau, they could also go wet season. And we are working on that, and there is some progress. So what I'm saying in essence is that while we are aware of all of these projections, based on the hard realities that we met, we are also not folding our arms. We are working very hard to make sure that we are able to reverse the trend. Now, one thing that I will say here is that usually when you have production and the production thins out and there is no replenishment, what do you expect? Definitely there will be hunger. So that is why we said we have finished the rainy season. Unlike before, when we just all go and celebrate, this time around we are going back to farm. We are clearing the lands, and a lot of farmers are prepared to go back. We are targeting 280,000 hectares of land. And
for the dry season farming?
For the dry season farming, yes. And we are looking at both wheat, we are looking at maize, we are also looking at cassava, we are looking at maize. Yes, I've mentioned maize.
Let me ask you about the impact, because, my colleague mentioned the Northeast in particular. Yeah. We're very aware of what happened with the dam in Borno State that broke, exactly, and we saw the attendant floods. And we know that quite a number of farmlands were also affected as a result of that. Can you tell us what the impact was, on Borno, on the farmers in Borno in general, and what exactly the projections have been to try and, assuage or to at least, make it easier on the farmers who might have lost their farms as a result of that flood?
Well, let me see. Actually, in the Federal Executive Council, we took a very special memo from the Federal Ministry of Water Resources immediately this happened. And they were asked to go back and do this evaluation. The report has not been, I've not seen the report yet, so I will not be able to speak on facts about that. But let me say this.
Oh, the Ministry of Water Resources is the one handling it?
Yeah, the Ministry of Water Resources, they are the ones that have, because when they do, they are supposed to go and see the damage done by the, by the dam. But then in terms of the fact that, yes, we've seen reports of farmers' fields being destroyed, yes, in the evaluation report that I talked about, the performance report, some of these issues were reported in terms of the flooding, and I think we saw damage of about 120,000 hectares of farmlands all over the country that were impacted, not just that of Borno, but all over the country that were impacted. And remember, the dry spell also that we witnessed also impacted. But then there was a recovery. And I think that is the iniquities of this climate change we're talking about. You are not definitely able to say this is what is going to happen. You have some semblance of what you are projecting. But then until it happens, you will not be able to know exactly what the impact is. And I think within this context, we have seen those reports, seeing what has happened. But yet, in spite of all of this, we reported this marginal increase. So I think for us, that is a plus. And that is why we are looking at building a resilient, sustainable farming system. And the only way to do that is to make sure that first, we look at our soils. And we are currently having a national farmer soil scheme where we're going to look at the soil at specific level. And I think it's one of the programs that is already ongoing now. And we are already using this scheme to support the National Agricultural Growth Scheme. And as an example, when the survey on the various soils were done, it was realized that the nutrient level in Jigawa is deficient. And so in terms of the support we are giving, for example, while other farmers will be getting 50 kg for urea, for example, Jigawa will be getting 100 kg per hectare. And in some other places where they will be getting 100, Jigawa will be getting 150. So we are using all of these things to address the challenges that we met on ground. And I think agriculture is no magic. If you plant today, you have to wait for the period. And so all of the things we are doing are time bound. We are aware of this and we are working very hard to make sure that we don't lose any production time again. And remember, because of the importance, the strategy globally is that if you have to transform your agri-food system, you must bring all your resources to bear. And that is why also when the First Lady came up with the Every Home a Garden, we keyed into it, we partnered with her, and as for next year, we have transformed the two major components of her, this thing, which is the Every Home a Garden and then the Young Farmers Club. We are transforming it into the National Urban Agriculture Program next year as part of our effort to consolidate. And I think the world over, urban agriculture is coming in to complement our food security system.
All right, Ayo, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. Well, talking about food security, there was an initiative, Senator, that was announced by the Federal Minister of Agriculture last year, the National Food Security Summit. When it was being announced, it was said to be intended to bring stakeholders together for the development of the National Action Plan for Food Security with an implementation and sustainability strategy. What has happened to that, Senator? Yeah. Is this still going to happen?
Well, it's going to happen, but sometimes when you start something, no matter how eager you are, some realities will also, stare you in the face. And I think what we saw was that the challenges on ground requires that we roll our, sleeves and get down to some work. And I think that was why we had to, for now, put on hold the idea of that summit. Because the key issues that will be discussed are staring us in the face, and we have to deal with them. That explains why we held it. But then, before the summit, we were expected to have the National Council on Agriculture. And I think you recall, some few weeks back, we had the National Council on Agriculture and Food Security in Calabar, Cross River State. So the output of that, what did they call it, conference, the council, they are expected to form some of the issues that we'll be tabling when we convey or when we convoke the National Food Security Summit. So maybe hopefully 2025 we're going to look at the National Food Security Summit, especially given the fact that so many of the programs we've been working on are going to begin to get traction in 2025.
Well, interesting angle to it, because you've talked about a number of things that has been done, which is like the interventions have already begun. But when you mention the hundreds of hectares or hundreds of thousands of hectares that the federal government is planning, excuse me, it suggests to me that the federal government is in partnership with states. Otherwise, I'm Absolutely. Wondering whether or not there is a land that's ascribed to the federal government without any states. So I'm just
in all of this, we are working with the 36 states and the FCT.
Which leads me to this question. Which leads me to this question. What are the interventions out there? For instance, the Anchor Borrowers program, we understand, has perhaps been suspended. You want to tell us about that? And if it has been suspended, what replacement initiative are you using to fund or help the low-income, the small farmers, smallholder farmers, wherever they are, all over the nation? Well, I'm aware that there is a program that is supposed to be all across all 774 local government areas in the country to facilitate agribusiness. What's the difficulty that's been encountered in that? What responses are you getting from that? What is happening in that area of developing agribusiness in the country?
Well, thank you very much. Let me say this. We are working very close with the subnationals. And I think the state governors are actually in sync with us. We have platforms where we meet. For example, the National Economic Council, the ministry always presents what we are doing so that we are able to create the synergy that is required for us to gain traction in our programs. And I think the governors have received all the programs we are doing very well. We are also looking at the current system where we'll be able to reinvigorate our institutional framework to support the implementation of programs down to the local government level. Now, in terms of the, what do they call it, programs that, you talked about Anchor Borrowers program. Remember, the Anchor Borrowers program was implemented by the CBN, and to the best of our knowledge, when we came on board, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture reported to us that they played very minimal role in terms of that particular program. But then the CBN is reviewing, and we are also taking notes of the reviews so that we'll be able to learn from whatever happens. And one of the programs that is similar to it that we are having right now is the National Agricultural Growth Scheme, Agro Pocket, which is funded by the African Development Bank. And I'll also report here that the Japanese International Cooperation Agency, JICA, is actually also coming on board now with some funding to support expansion of the National Agricultural Growth Scheme. And this National Agricultural Growth Scheme is targeting our major staples to support food security. And the crops are wheat, rice, maize, cassava. And so here, some element of support are given to farmers in terms of, fertilizers, in terms of agrochemicals, and in terms of extension services.
Okay.
And I think these projects are ongoing currently right now.
Well, still talking about states, Honorable Minister, yeah. I'm aware, and I'm sure you are as well, of the special agro-industrial processing zones, with 7 states currently, including the FCT, being primary beneficiaries of the pilot phase. From what we know, $538 million has been assigned for that. And there is already very serious concerns in some very, very strategic sectors how slowly the process is ongoing. Meanwhile, we also heard, I think it's the AFDB that's also announced the potential $1 billion phase 2 of that project. And it seems to have a kind of caveat that if we don't do well with the first phase, we may not move on to the second phase. Is there any way that the federal government can expedite action on this?
Let me tell you that all the issues that have held the project from moving have been resolved. And all the states are being onboarded. And let me say also that the second phase, the first phase that you talked about, actually had not been given because ideally we need to give some time for that to even take off. But because of the pressure coming from the states that saw what the beneficiary states have already begun to do, they also understood what this project is capable of doing and are saying we are not going to wait for that, lead time before we come on board. And I think that also added some, challenges in terms of addressing, rather than 7, you are now having all the states, everybody wanting to come on board. And I want to report to you that all the states have signified interest. The last batch of states have also signified interest, and I think that issue is being dusted. But let me say this, because it's a big project, there are a lot of things that have to be done so that they are done right and to enable us gain the benefit. Remember, it's like a one-stop shop where you are going to have both production in terms of the contract farming, those who are going to produce the commodities that will be brought into the processing center, and the various type of products that will be developed. So, and different states have different potentials. So I know that the secretariat, that is the national coordinator, who is a very young chap, is doing his best, and they are working assiduously along with the bank officials to see that this project comes to stream.
Just one more thing before you go. What is the ministry doing about agri-produce being rejected in Europe because of pesticides, the amount of that? So what's happening there?
Well, this is actually a very worrisome and troubling situation. We have packaged a project we call Zero Reject that is designed now to go to the farmers. Because you see, the whole of this starts from beginning of the operation. And it means farmers have to be shown how they are going to do their operation without adding unnecessary chemicals, because from the point of production, different chemicals are being used. So that let them use the right chemicals, not chemicals that have been banned in those countries. That's number one. Number two, we need to also train a number of our farmers to know exactly what the market is demanding. Because if we are producing, and I think this brings back me to the issue Ayo was raising about agribusiness. If agriculture is seen as a business, then you must be you must be responding to the market. And I think it is the market that dictates what it wants, how it wants it, and your own duty is to come back and look at the standard operating procedure you need to adopt to make sure that by the time the product is out, it meets that specification. That we have taken very seriously, and for that reason, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security next year is hoping to intensify what it started this year in terms of training farmers on what we call zero reject.
All right.
I'm just wondering whether there's also that facility for us here, because nobody knows what they're really consuming. We don't know how much chemical is in anything. You know, is there a way? Are we looking at that
You
now?
know, we have a nutrition and food safety department, and the nutrition and food safety department is actually designed to look at how nutritious our foods are, because sometimes even the preparatory process might take away the nutrients without you knowing. So all of these things are being looked into, but most importantly, food safety. And I think food safety is something you need to put in place so that you keep monitoring the system and seeing that, yes, if today they've done the right thing, what about tomorrow? And that's why usually in the food industry, they have what they call batching. Food are produced in batches, so that for each batch, you are able to test the integrity of the process that led to its production. And then when another batch comes in, you test it independent. So we are working very hard to put in place some of these things. And let me add this, that in the office of the Vice President, we have the Presidential Food Security Coordinating Council. I think there is a unit that is now created. And under that, we have what we call Nutrition 774, which is designed to see how do we take the knowledge of both nutrition and food safety down to the 774 local government areas.
All right, we have to thank you for coming on, Senator Sabi Ali Abdullahi, Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security. All the best to you and the team.
Well, thank you very much. But let me say this. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is seriously concerned about our food security situation. And let me add that many times he will say to us, his vision is for us to take Nigeria to that position where no man goes to bed hungry. And we realize that, and we are working very hard to make sure we achieve that.
All right, so Business Morning comes up next.
Well, hello and welcome to Business Morning. We see the December trade is moving along just fine. And I believe this week we should be getting CPI data. That's for November. At some point this week, we'll definitely be looking out for those numbers to see how the Monetary Policy Committee, this would drive direction when it comes to the first rate setting meeting that's coming up next year. But we still have a lot of central bankers globally coming up with their rate setting meetings. That's for this week, talking about the ECB and other top central bankers. But let's get a check on the oil market now. See, oil prices climbed after the fall of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's regime, introduced greater uncertainty to the Middle East, although the gains were capped by a waning demand outlook. That's for the coming year. And so we have WTI crude getting further away from the $70 psychological level. It was up 0.57% this morning. Brent crude holding on strong to that $70 level at $71.48 a barrel, up about 0.51% this morning. So it's still about geopolitics and demand outlook driving sentiment. Saudi Aramco, the world's biggest crude oil exporter, has reduced its January 2025 prices for Asian buyers to the lowest level since early 2021. The company said that weak demand from top importer China weighs on the market. And I remember on Thursday last week, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, OPEC Plus, pushed back the start of oil output increases by 3 months until April and extended the full unwinding of production cuts by a year until the end of 2026. To the FX market now, closing the week, we see NAFEX window appreciated by about 52 Naira 80 kobo, fixing at 1,552 Naira to the dollar. Similarly, NFM, their big jump there, 2.04%. That was the trade for Friday. So we see big moves up for the Naira last week, 1,552 Naira. That's the closed trade for NAFEX. NFM, 1,535 Naira. So let's see if this 1.5 level, maybe that might be the new range, or maybe we might go sub 1.5 at some point this week, with reports of supply outstripping demand right there in the FX market. So other stories now, the Nigerian government raked in about 1.78 trillion Naira from value-added tax in the third quarter of 2024. That's according to data from the National Bureau of Statistics. The data disclosed that the VAT data comes amid ongoing debates over the new sharing formula for the revenue as proposed in the new tax reform bills currently before the National Assembly. The Q3 VAT figure represents a 14.16% quarter-on-quarter increase compared to the 1.56 trillion collected in the second quarter of 2024 and 88% year-on-year growth from the third quarter of 2023. And Nigeria's contributory pension assets rose by 4.62 trillion Naira between October 2023 and October 2024, indicating a 24.14% rise. And that's according to data from the National Pension Commission. And the end of October, PENCOM, in its monthly report, revealed that the value of pension assets stood at 21.92 trillion compared to 17.66 trillion Naira at the end of the same period in 2023. In terms of asset composition, the dynamics of the asset mix for pension assets under management remained relatively unchanged, with the majority of pension assets concentrated in government securities. In the period under review, investments of pension funds in federal government securities that rose from 11.42 trillion Naira to 13.57 trillion Naira. And to other stories now, stakeholders in the integrated marketing communications sector and seasoned analysts converged at the Oriental Hotel earlier this month to discuss rebuilding consumer confidence as macroeconomic headwinds continue to weigh on consumer disposable income. Keynote speaker at the event, Otumba Bimbo Ashiru, chairman of Odua Group of companies, highlighted the need to make the best of any situation, citing innovations brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. Take a listen.
In the last decade, consumer confidence has become a lot more important, not only in Nigeria, but around the world. This is true at both the macro and micro levels. Global economic realities, especially the high inflationary environment in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and the immense strain it puts on the global supply chain, inflation, technology, haven't driven away consumers interact with the economy. The Nigerian economy is known for its resilience, and the last few years have been a good test of that resilience. And I will tell you this is a country that is blessed with a lot of natural resources, but I keep on telling you, I read, I can't remember one of the newspapers, 1978, said things are getting worse. Then during Abacha regime, said, oh, it can be better than this. Now we had Obasanjo say, oh, Nigeria has never found it like this. Then Yar'Adua came and said, oh, this is the worst economy. Then Jonathan came to, oh, this is, no, we cannot even stand Jonathan. Then Buhari came and said, Baba, go slow. So the point is this, where do we hand this, or where do we start this? But the point is that we need to now start looking at how we can make the best out of the bad situation. About the trajectory of overall income levels, consumer prices, consumer trends, buoyancy of the economy in general are at the heart of consumer confidence.
And now to our first conversation. A surge in the Naira's value has been observed in the official market. Looking at numbers there for the close on Friday, raising questions about the sustainability of this trend and its impacts on the broader economy. Well, joining us now to analyze, we have Mr. Ogodre Obichugo, CEO, Nairametrics. Join us via Zoom. Great to have you on the show. Good morning.
Good morning.
Right.
Good to be here.
Great to have you. And I saw most of your comments earlier during the weekend about this rally we're seeing from the Naira. And I also saw some interesting comments on social media. Some lady says she bought dollars at about 1,007, and now the Naira is strengthening. And she was asking, when is it going to weaken again so she can get back to profit? How are you seeing this rise so far?
Oh, so sorry for her. I mean, this is not the market where speculators will be smiling at the moment. This is not me saying she's a speculator, but if you're a speculator at the moment, this is not very good. In fact, from what I'm hearing, Ladi, a lot of sellers are essentially find buyers, people who buy, the dollars that they have, and why those who perhaps may have wanted to buy are saying, wait a minute, it looks like this thing might strengthen even further. So maybe this is not a time to buy. And this is what we're hearing from, in fact, there was one particular trader who said that they couldn't wait to sell. And so they ended up selling for as low as 1.5, right? So it appears that the Naira is really staging a strong rebound now. Whether that's going to last this week will be interesting to see. But from what we gather, this all started on Monday when the central bank launched the new trading platform based on FMs. If you recall, Ladi, they had put up a new regulation that essentially guides how FX is traded. So unlike before, where you had several windows where FX is traded, now FX is traded in one platform where everybody can essentially see all trades. You can see the price, you can see the volumes, you can see the turnover. And so that way it's easier to now see supply versus demand. And from what we're hearing, the more supply you have and compared to demand, then price would obviously go down. That is what it looks like is happening at the moment. Price is strengthening for the Naira and Ladi. And who knows, maybe this can be sustained all week. I also spoke to someone who's very close to the issue or to the how FMs operate. And from what I gather, I heard the central bank actually did sell about $20 million into the market at the start of the entire the launch of the FMs. But they actually bought it back as well because there was just so much supply in the market. There was just no need for the CBN to intervene. So it doesn't look like the CBN is intervening at the moment, which is actually a good thing, because if the CBN is not intervening, then it appears that this is actually a private sector driven correction, if you want to call that, for the exchange rate. And so interesting to see how this is sustained. Now, how has this affected the parallel market? But I mean, you do know that most times the parallel market tends to drive the exchange rate. But I feel like the BDC operators may have sort of, read, it's in the handwriting on the wall. And because the BDC operators with that have met the recapitalization target of the central bank can now trade in this platform, it appears they all, see that, hey, this is not the time to start to hoard Forex for those who may be hoarding, and that prices may just go the other way. And so that is why you're probably seeing a lot of the strengthening of the Naira at the moment.
And I'm wondering, is this just the FM's platform with the transparency, we've heard about from the platform? Is that what's the only thing that's driving, this strengthening? Or is it also I just got back crew, bringing in dollars into the country, talking about diaspora remittance?
Well, interestingly, we did an analysis at Nairametrics, and over the last 3 to 4 years, the Naira tends to strengthen in December anyways. So, and that is a combination of a lot of factors. Of course, I just got back crew is also one of the reasons, even though most of them you expect to start to return this week and early next week. And so, which also suggests that maybe we might even see a stronger Naira as we approach the end of the year. So Naira has typically ended strongly in December. And so, yes, that could also be a factor. But in terms of what we've seen last week, I think it's basically the effect of the FMs. And let me just also explain a little bit of what I learned about the FMs as well. So speaking to traders, they say, look, unlike before, when trades are a bit opaque and not transparent, it's very much different now, because now when a buyer or a seller is trying to buy, so you can place a bid to buy forex, and then the volume that you want to buy is displayed on the system. They can also see the price, and so the seller also has offer on ground and price, and everyone sees this. So just the same way, if you're familiar with trading stocks, how those things appear on the engine is similar to what they see on the system that they currently use. And so that just eliminates any asymmetry that typically exists in the past. And so with this, people can then look at and say, hey, wait a minute, it looks like there's a lot more supply out there than demand. And what would happen then is price correction. And that's what I think is actually driving it now. Now, what can sustain it is now a different thing. Of course, being able to sustain this price will require that you have a lot more forex being sold in the market by those who have forex at the moment. BDC operators being able to access this market as well, because now the regulation allows them to buy directly from this market too, so they can also access this market. And then, of course, the IJGBs, like you mentioned as well. Now, Ladi, make no mistakes about it, there's still a lot of headwinds for the Naira, as you very well know. The one thing we also gathered as well is that BDC operators are saying that they can't also afford to buy that platform. So the platform, I understand, is a Bloomberg platform, which existing FX traders or even existing market traders who currently use Bloomberg consoles have that now. So for those ones, they don't need to spend extra to have that, to be able to trade in that market. But for BDC operators who don't have that engine, they need to invest in it. So that again could make the barrier to entry pretty much high for BDC operators. And if that is the case, then that can sustain a black market, because then that black market will exist. Then, of course, people who also don't want to go through the rigor of applying through a bank to buy or sell forex could still continue to do that on the black market. And we all know sometimes the black market tends to drive the official market. But so those are just some of the the headwinds or the initial issues you might see. But I doubt that would have any major effect, Larry.
Right. And I'm sure another question in the minds of the people now is where would all of this translate to lower prices, lower PMS prices? Because we know they've said the prices are high because the Naira was weak. So now we're seeing strengthening for the Naira. And we know some of those sellers that say, oh, we bought goods at so exchange rate. When will this translate to lower prices?
Good question, Ladi. I think that we've been here before. If you remember, in April this year, the exchange rate was going for about at some point, it strengthened to about 1,000, slightly under 1,100 Naira to the dollar for a couple of days. And then everybody thought, hey, looks like things have changed. And then it started tanking again. So I think you're not going to see that pass-through happen immediately. Remember that a lot of people have already imported goods at 1,617. And so they're not going to all of a sudden just reduce the cost of their goods and services because of 1 week of gains. And so they have to, first of all, recoup their profit. Now, what is very key here is how much we can sustain this. So if we're able to sustain this exchange rate at, let's even assume 1.5 for another 3 months or 6 months, then I think you can now start to see how that will impact prices, because stability is all people always ask for. I know that a lot of Nigerians don't even want to hear exchange rate at 1.5 to $1. I think in terms of, optics, it just doesn't work. So people want it to be closer to maybe 1,000 or 1,200, and then maybe people can start to perceive that. So I think that is the kind of drop that you want to see that would now translate into lower prices.
Right.
For now, I don't think you're going to see lower prices. What you might see, however, is a slowdown in higher prices.
Okay, but because it's quite incredible, once the Naira weakens, it's incredible how fast, most of these prices rise, immediately. Well, thank you so much. Always great to have you, Ugojo Bichuku, CEO of Nairametrics. Thank you for coming on today.
Pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we'll take a break. Now, when we come back, we'll get a check of what to expect for businesses with this recent rally. That's in a moment. Do stay with us. All right, now let's discuss the expected impact of the continued rally of the Naira and businesses and fintechs alike. Joining us now, we have Tunde Burema, the CEO and founder, Cardify. Joining me via Zoom. Great to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure, Ladi.
So as a business, that plays in that FX market, talk to me about your take on the FM's platform.
Yeah, so the electronic forex monitoring system, in simple terms, is a system introduced by the central bank to monitor and manage foreign exchange transactions across the country. Think of it as a digital ledger that tracks every forex transaction in real time. This ensures transparency, efficiency, and of course, compliance with regulations. For a country like us, where foreign exchange is a critical resource, FMs is crucial because at the end of the day, it is looking like it's going to reduce irregularities, promote fair access to foreign exchange, and build confidence in the forex system, both locally and internationally. So the FMC is typically building a transparent forex environment. This is beneficial for businesses, financial institutions, and regulators alike. So I think it is a significant step in modernizing Nigeria's financial ecosystem and aligning it with global standards.
And how is this rally, impacting your industry right now? Most of you fintechs, deal with, bringing in foreign exchange, into the country, and also allowing people to buy stuff, with cards that are FX enabled.
Yeah. So the recent strengthening of the Naira that happened in the past week saw an appreciation of over 8%, in just 1 week. This marks like a significant shift in the entire ecosystem. The change comes, of course, after the CBN introduced the Bloomberg B-Match system with guidelines, with typical guidelines that sets the minimum tradable amount to $100,000 and the incremental clip sizes to around $50,000. So this system aims to, bring transparency. However, for fintechs and startups, this development has mixed implications. On the positive side, a stronger Naira helps reduce the cost of importing technology, paying for international services, and handling other dollar-denominated transactions. So this is a welcome relief for businesses that rely heavily on foreign inputs. It also creates a predictable and transparent exchange rate environment, as I have mentioned earlier. But about the impact of Naira's volatility on the wider frame, on the funding ecosystem. So it's like, most Nigerian and African startups, get their funding and report their revenues in dollars. So startups seek out dollar-backed investments for two major reasons. First, they incur third-party services in dollars, and secondly, even local venture capitals also get their funding in dollars.
So I guess, at some point, if this continues, that should be positive, for most of these fintechs. But talk to me now about dollar inflows coming from Diaspora this season And how would you describe demand for, dollar virtual cards so far?
Yeah, typically on the general, ecosystem, there was a recent report by TLP Advisory that 49% of Nigerian startups generate less than 10 million naira a year in revenue. So to put this in perspective, relative to what is going on in the dollar to naira, foreign exchange window, a company with, let's say, 10 million naira in revenue would have reported around $11,000 in January 2024. But today's exchange rate, will mean it will now report around $6,000 for that same 10 million naira revenue. So as currency devaluation happens, revenue dwindles, even if the businesses tend to grow. So a startup who makes money in naira that has raised money in US dollars needs to be doing almost ×3 of the work, and earning ×3 of the income, because the currency keeps devaluing. At this time more than 70%. So at the end of the day, the startups, they have to report in dollars to investors who have invested in US dollars. So the argument has always been there for startups like us, like a comparison between raising funds in local currency rather than raising funds in dollars. The Nigerian Startup Act is also, stepping in to encourage that local investors, local investments, they give local investments, incentives so that they can keep their capital within the country.
All right, let's talk about digital wallets now. We know we have a lot of digital wallet platforms at this time. Talk to me about the growth rate in 2024 and what you're seeing, going into 2025.
That's a great question, Ladi. In 2024, the adoption of digital wallets in Nigeria has grown significantly. There is a reported growth rate of around 25%, and this surge is driven by factors like increased smartphone penetration, the shift towards cashless transactions, and the rise of e-commerce generally, globally. Looking ahead to 2025, the dominance of digital wallets in e-commerce is expected to grow exponentially, both globally and locally. According to a report by Juniper, digital wallets are projected to account for more than 50% of global e-commerce transaction value by 2025, and that's up to 40% increase from what we had in 2021. So this global trend aligns with what we are seeing in Nigeria, where digital wallets are becoming the default payment methods for online transactions. And one of the driving factors behind this growth is the increasing cross-border integration of digital wallets with major e-commerce platforms. These integrations enable Nigerians to complete transactions in local fiat currencies for goods and services that were previously restricted to being gotten, with foreign currencies. So this would not only boost the growth rate of digital wallets, but also reduce reliance on foreign currencies.
Right.
And yeah.
Right. I guess at some point I wouldn't even see a physical wallet anymore. But thank you so much. It was great having your perspective. That was Tunde Burembo as the CEO and the founder of Cardify. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's get a quick check on how the markets played out. That's the Nigeria's stock market there, 0.72%. That's for last week there, 98,210 points. So it was a positive week for the first trading week of December. Let's look at the trading activity now. We see it was a total of 43,000 deals in the market last week, lower than what we had in the previous one, but we see volume showing that investors were very busy in the market this week, 61% up. Then we see the banking counter lone loser for last week, down about 2.57%. But on the flip side, I've noticed that trend now. Insurance, that's also financial services,
outperforming the banking index there, 4.54% for the week, and we see other sectors that we track. So that's it from me on Business Morning. I'll give you a review of what's playing out at 1 p.m. on Business Incorporated. I'm Ladi Williams. I hand things over to the Sunrise Daily team.
Evening of relaxation and networking in an atmosphere that exudes comradeship as the British Council marks her 80th anniversary in Nigeria. The sense of fulfillment officials of the British Council reflect on the journey of 8 decades in Nigeria, 80 years of excellent service in promoting quality education, cultural integration and inclusivity.
Together we have empowered millions of young Nigerians with skills, education and connections that open doors. These achievements underscore the strength of the UK-Nigerian relationship, which we are proud to support and nurture for mutual benefits.
The British Council in Nigeria works to create more inclusive society through a variety of its programs, including education, entrepreneurship, English language development, arts and culture. The United Kingdom High Commissioner to Nigeria reflects on the activities of the Council in the last 80 years, just as he makes a further commitment to amplifying the voice of young people.
And the thing that I'm most looking forward to is an issue you touched on, the transnational education partnerships. This concept that actually it's not just about attracting Nigerian students to come and study in the UK, but it's the responsibility of UK universities to build mutually supportive partnerships to improve quality education in Nigeria, in the Nigerian higher education ecosystem. This is where the British Council has played a key catalytic role and will continue to be a key catalytic institution going forward.
Amplifying the voices of youths for the future is at the heart of what we do. And working with youths across sub-Saharan Africa is a priority.
And the cake for the 80th anniversary of the British Council in Nigeria is cut.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. That was nice.
Established in Nigeria in 1944, British Council has continued to evolve in its programs and services to promote arts and culture, shape policies that guarantee quality education, as well as encourage entrepreneurship.
All right, welcome back. Yes, indeed, as you may have seen in the welcoming slide, we're joined by His Excellency Richard Montgomery, British High Commissioner to Nigeria. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, both.
Yeah, so yes, we'll talk about that and a lot more. So we don't know. Let's see how this plays out. Let's start off with UK's Foreign Secretary's visit to Nigeria. Quite an interesting one. Could you talk to us about the significance of that visit?
Well, I think it was significant for a number of reasons. He came only a few weeks ago. I think, Marpa, you interviewed him.
Indeed, I did.
It was his first visit as Foreign Secretary to Africa, and he chose Nigeria as the first country to come to. He also announced a new consultation on the new UK government's relationship with Africa. And most important for Nigeria, he achieved a number of meetings with various ministers, including the Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs, and he met His Excellency, the President. And Nigeria and the UK, we signed a strategic partnership that covers a number of areas that we've been working on over the last year to build our relationship on trade and investment, on security and defence, on our migration and visa relationship. And of course, because Nigeria is such an anchor country in the region, in the continent, we are also talking more on foreign policy issues in the region and globally, indeed. And of course, we have a big people-to-people relationship, a big development cooperation program. So all of these issues were wrapped up into a strategic partnership. And that strategic partnership was a fantastic achievement. It's based on the fact that the UK government wants to work with the government of Nigeria under the Renewed Hope agenda. But it was particularly pleasing as High Commissioner to get that strategic partnership across the line with a new UK government under the leadership of my Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and of course David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary.
It's interesting. I mean, you speak of a whole encompassing strategic partnership. You mentioned many areas that it is also covering. One of the areas I think you're also looking at is energy. The Foreign Secretary mentioned, getting electricity. We see that we're struggling a bit with electricity in Nigeria, and that's one of the areas that, the UK is looking to invest, especially in the area of trade. But it was pretty short on specifics. So I don't know, is it possible for you to flesh out the specifics for us?
I can try. We recognize that energy is so important for Nigeria. And, we're very conscious that in certain parts of the country there have been quite severe blackouts in recent months, and people have been facing quite considerable hardship on it. We have been working with the Ministry of Power and independent power producers and the distribution companies to provide, in our own small ways, some technical ideas, ways of improving the national grid, ways of improving electricity supply. We're also working with independent power producers to try and create off-grid solutions, whether it's solar panels in health clinics. We have a program on that. But we're also working with businesses that are big enough to justify their own power supply. And we have a line of effort in helping businesses raise capital, particularly for cleaner energy, greener energy, solar particularly. But we are standing ready to discuss further with the government how we can help through relevant technical assistance where we can offer support. And of course, we support other international financial institutions like the African Development Bank, the World Bank, that are very active in the sector in terms of financing.
For those who are watching this program now and will be saying, I'd like to see if I can access that. Where should they be looking to? Should they be looking to the Nigerian side, or should they be looking to the British High Commission to provide more details on how they can get access to some of these things?
So there are 2 pointers I'd give. The first is we have a technical assistance program called the UK Nigeria Infrastructure Advisory Facility. It's actually mainly staffed by Nigerian experts. Unfortunately, that facility is coming to an end. We're in discussions with the federal government about what a successor program would look like to try and help back the reforms that the federal government is pushing forward in the energy sector. But we also have our own development finance institution called British International Investment, BII. It's based down in Lagos, and they have been funding some private sector. They help to raise equity debt to help private businesses raise money for energy projects.
Or maybe a little bit more on business, because I know we might just go to this tax matter soon. Do we expect perhaps maybe a little more specifics, or what would it be? Will there be, talk to us about the role that British businesses will play in Nigeria to help boost our economic reform agenda?
Yeah. Well, look, can I start with the big picture, which is, I think, one of the meeting of minds when both my Prime Minister and His Excellency the President spoke over the phone some months ago, and when the Foreign Secretary came and met His Excellency the President, is that both our governments are focused on growth. And it's a very stark reality that Nigeria has a demographic boom that is a huge potential opportunity to harness, but the rate of growth is not keeping up with that. So growth for Nigeria, you can see why His Excellency the President and his economic management team have made growth absolutely central. A lot of growth obviously has to come from internal investment, Nigerians' own effort, but growth can be boosted by enhanced trade and investment. And that's why earlier this year, actually in late February, we signed an enhanced trade and investment partnership to try and boost the amount of UK investment and trade between our two countries. And that sort of focus on growth is just central to the partnership. Now, in terms of, we signed this enhanced trade and investment partnership, what we call ETIP, And it has a number of sectors where we see the potential for more UK investment. So there are lots of British businesses already in Nigeria, fast-moving retail goods, in energy, transnational education. But we see a real potential for growth in creatives, in transnational education, in indeed agriculture, in Nigeria's agricultural exports. So those are areas where we're working with the federal government to try and work out how we can best boost trade and investment between Britain and Nigeria.
For those exports, agri-exports, I know we just spoke to the minister not long ago.
Senator Abdullahi, yeah. I was listening to him in the
meeting. Because I mean, we're concerned about some of our produce being rejected in Europe. What do we expect from Britain in that regard?
So this is something really interesting about the ETIP. So the Nigerian Standards Organization and UK Standards Organizations are talking about how we can help exporters meet standards, because the simple fact is that the UK, as of about 18 months ago, removed all tariffs on 99% of Nigerian exports to the UK.
Okay.
So there's a very preferential trade regime from Britain to Nigeria. But you've put your finger, Chamberlain, on a real issue, which is meeting standards is important, especially food standards. But that's where our Enhanced Trade Investment Partnership, we have a working group, we have some technical assistance with the Nigerian Standards Organization to help exporters achieve what they need to achieve in terms of standards so they can export more easily.
I think I want to, just one more from me on that particular one, because I mean, it concerns a lot of people. When we hear that, we just keep wondering, so where exactly are we missing it? So do you have that kind of conversation with SON in terms of what specifically do businesses need to do here to ensure they meet up with those standards?
So one issue is standards, and there are other regulatory issues that we need to work on. But just to give a concrete example, I was up in Kano a few months ago, and we went and saw some food processors, very professional, lots of very good food products being packaged. It's more a certification issue in those factories. How do you get the right certification so that the export is more easily? But I mean, there are other issues on which we would like to have further conversations with the government about how do you boost investment in different areas. So, and I think the appointment of Dr. Jumoke as the new Federal Minister for Industry, Trade and Investment is very exciting, because she's got a lot of experience in her past career about making it easier for business to work, business regulatory reform. And there are various interests. You on the Lagos show about financial technology, there's a new digital economy e-commerce legislation likely to go through the National Assembly here. We'd like to have conversation with our Nigerian partners about what will boost financial technology growth in that sort of sector. We're hoping, after the Foreign Secretary met the Honourable Minister for the Creative Economy, we're hoping to work together on various ways of boosting co-investment in the creative sector, whether it's film or music. And, for example, the Foreign Secretary, he brought some people from the British creative sector to talk about co-production. What would it take to get more UK investment in Nigeria film and music, which of course is taking the world by storm. So we're very interested in your creative economy expanding, just as the UK creative economy is one of about 6-7 areas that my government is prioritizing as a sort of strategic priority for the UK growth agenda.
It certainly was very heartwarming to see, one of our artists on the stage in the UK when Prince Charles was coronated. So,
Tiwa Savage.
Yeah, Tiwa Savage, yeah. So certainly, we can see that relationship is certainly budding in that, well, maybe growing even. But I want to take you up on the issue of foreign policy, because this is one of the areas you say that, the visit of the Foreign Secretary also focused on. It's unclear. For some countries, we know that depending on the government in power, diplomatic relations are sometimes affected. In other words, the policy might change because of what has been promised back home. Now that we have the Labour Party in power, we know the Conservatives have been there for a long time, and now we have Labour in power. How is that going to shape any differently our foreign diplomacy between the UK, or coming from the UK to Nigeria?
So I think The new Labour government, and the Foreign Secretary in particular, wants to reset our relationship with a number of countries. And it's a change in tone. He wants to know what people in other countries think, and for us to be more responsive. He wants our tone to be more respectful. And I think that there was a very interesting theme that ran through the Foreign Secretary's visit here, where he was very much in listening mode. He wasn't in telling mode. And he heard some messages which were quite different on some of the policies that we've had towards certain issues like energy. He was told multiple times Nigeria needs to use its gas for its energy transition. The energy poverty here is so great. Why is the West only focusing on green technology? We need a more holistic approach in a country like Nigeria. He was listening very carefully to what the Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs, and indeed His Excellency the President, was saying about the region. Not just about the ECOWAS region, in which Nigeria is the anchor country, but also about other very important foreign policy issues like Sudan. How do we deal with a humanitarian catastrophe? How do we get more humanitarian aid in, justify that access, get access to providing that assistance? But how do we bring the warring parties to the table, which is the most important thing? And, there were discussions about Sudan as something that Nigeria is very concerned about. You have a large diaspora there. You have lots of traditional historical links there. But also, there's a lot of spillovers that we're worried about coming into Chad and the situation in the Lake Chad Basin, on which we've worked for a long time in partnership with both the 4 countries of the Lake Chad Basin, but particularly with Nigeria as the anchor country in the region. So I think there's a focus in London on Nigeria being just so important for the region, for the leadership role it's playing under the presidency of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, His Excellency. But also Nigeria is a lot more assertive in global fora, attending the G20, arguing quite rightly for a seat on the UN Security Council, being active in the debate about the reform of the UN and the international financial institutions like the World Bank. So I think there is a real willingness to listen and partner and understand how the world has changed, and the voices in that world are changing.
Let's talk about immigration policies.
Sure.
Many Nigerians perceive UK's policies as overly restrictive, especially for students and skilled workers. So how do you respond to allegations that these inhibit human capital development?
I have to contest this picture because the UK in the last couple of years has granted around 300,000 new visas to Nigerians, which far exceeds any other visa relationship which Nigeria has with any other country. The trends have been really positive post-Brexit. Nigeria has been a major beneficiary of the post-Brexit migration visa rules. And if you look at, say, the number of people getting work visas in the UK, these people play an incredibly important role in certain sectors, particularly our social care sector. The number of people getting work visas to go to the UK has gone from something like 10 to 20,000 6-7 years ago to 80, 90,000 a year in the last 2 years, last year and this year. Now, we have 145 visit visas already, 145,000 visit visas already approved this year, similar to last year. Student numbers, they are down. We had around over 100,000 last academic year. The initial figures suggest they're around 70,000 this year. So student numbers, I admit, are down. But I think everybody agrees that it's a huge relationship. There's a lot of positivity in it. If you apply with the right documentation and the right evidence, the approval rate is very high. Student visas, it's 75%, I think. Sorry, 97%. Work visas, if you've got the right documentation and the job lined up, again, very high. So I would like to emphasize how huge the relationship. It outstrips any other visa relationship that Nigeria has with any other single country, in my understanding. But I'm very happy to talk further about what is on people's minds. I know that it's an issue that people want to talk about. So
always,
please come back at me.
Yeah, we will. But my colleague has questions for you, so let's see if he's going to go there. Ayo, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'd like to begin, from a soft angle, Dr. Montgomery. I mean, first of all, correct me if I'm wrong. You've been navigating Nigeria since 2009, working with the UK DFID at the time. You must have had a lot of jollof rice, haven't you?
Yes, thanks, Ayo. Nice to see you. Have had a lot of jollof rice. In fact, we have a campaign on jollof and tea. I hope you've noticed it, which is to emphasize the UK-Nigeria links by twinning one of Nigeria's national spicy dishes with the British national drink. But yes, this is my second posting to Nigeria, so please go ahead.
At least now I know that we have something in common, and that is tea. That's the only inheritance I got. But talking about the Nigeria-UK relations, it's exciting for many Nigerians, and of course, a little mixed reactions for some, that the leader of the Conservative Party in the UK is has very strong affiliations with Nigeria. How does that help the Nigeria-UK relations, in your opinion?
So look, I'd like to congratulate Kemi Badenoch on her election as the leader of the Conservative Party. I think she's, she's the first black British woman to run a major party, I think actually in Europe, not just in Britain. But I also would like to draw attention to that there are many other people that can trace their heritage back to other countries at the top of political society. Rishi Sunak, our previous Prime Minister, my previous Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. We have an incredibly diverse politics, and I think we should be proud of that. It's a very open society. There was a very interesting article in The Economist, I think in early October. It was an article that I actually shared with my Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, before he came out, and it was about the Nigerian diaspora in the UK and how they have reached the heights not just of politics, but of business, of sport, of music and fashion. You mentioned Tiwa Savage, for example, but many other people at the top echelons of various sectors of the British economy and society, academia and so forth. I could go on and on. So I think that it is very helpful to have leading figures that have a connection to Nigeria. It's an area that we would like to harness more in the British High Commission, and I know that as part of the Nigerian foreign policy, that Nigeria is looking to harness diaspora and the benefits that the connections bring, both to business but also to innovation, ideas. I think there's a huge potential to draw on diasporas, our mutual diasporas, much more effectively in the future.
Talking about Nigerians in diaspora, particularly those in the UK, there are those, Chamberlain asked you a question along that line earlier. When we talk about the Nigeria-UK relations, young Nigerians are looking at it in a particular way. What are the opportunities for them?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question because, I mentioned our Jollof and Tea campaign, and actually it's a light-hearted, quirky attempt to try and connect with a younger generation. We have a lot of shared history and we have a lot of mutual admiration for some of our traditional institutions in both countries, including traditional leaders and monarchies. But actually, that's not what interests young people in Nigeria. What younger people, I think, are often struggling with is opportunities. They want to have a better life and they want to know what opportunities are evolving and out there. Now, we have a number of areas that I think the UK High Commission and my team are active in. The first is the area that was actually covered in the news report just before I came on air, which is the British Council work. And the conference that we held only a couple of weeks ago in Abuja on Going Global Africa, hosted by the British Council and by the Nigerian Education Minister, which is about UK universities investing more in Nigerian universities and building their capability and building more educational opportunities and standards in Nigeria. And that's a very positive area. Another area, we mentioned creatives. There's a huge boom in the creative sector in Nigeria, whether it's film or fashion, music, art, but wider technology, social media and other technology. So that's one of our priority sectors. And as I said earlier, we've got a minister-to-minister dialogue about how we channel more investment into an area that could be good for young people. I'm also really conscious that there are parts of the economy that are lagging behind. There are parts of the economy in which some of these sort of more glitzy sectors aren't as relevant, and agriculture is one. We need to create more opportunities for people across the country in core economic sectors. And we do a lot of work in agriculture, and we want to do more. And I was very interested to hear Senator Abdullahi before I came on. The federal government has ideas. We need to follow up and back some of those ideas, and we already have some work in that area.
I can't believe time is flying when we've barely scratched the surface. But let me ask you this. There was this concern some time ago about Nigerians requesting to skip IELTS tests for coming to universities in London, UK. What is your impression or thought about that?
So I think, unfortunately, there are many people who apply for higher education in the UK that are not proven to have the skills. It's really important that if people are going to be successful in higher education, they have to show that they've got the right competencies to thrive. Otherwise, it can be quite a distressing situation to go into a course. The rules about this are global. They're nothing about Nigeria in particular. So I think the focus should more be on that many people do want to go to the UK higher education for opportunities, but supply now outstrips demand. So the UK had an international education strategy set 3-4 years ago that we would aim to have 600,000 international students, foreign students studying in UK higher education. And last year we hit 750,000 students in higher education in the UK, foreign students. So we've somewhat overshot our capacity, and that makes it inevitably somewhat competitive. And I think, let's be honest, tests are a way of making sure that people have the right competencies to thrive in higher education in the UK.
Yeah, just they don't understand how is it that Antigua, Barbados, Bahamas, Jamaica, countries like that, they're excluded from taking the test, but Nigeria, they insist that we have to take that test. So they wonder, we speak English is basic here. So.
These countries, I can't comment on these specific countries, but I can make a guess. Will you allow me to guess and not hold me to it? They're much smaller than Nigeria.
Much smaller?
Much smaller, and maybe there's a stronger track record of previous students. I think there are always good reasons why guardrails are put in, and Nigeria is one of the biggest countries in terms of that visa relationship. 10% of all visas, new visas granted by the UK in the last 2 years have been to Nigerians. And many Nigerians still, have 5 or 10-year visas. There's a huge relationship. Education incredibly valued. Huge numbers of students still going, and it should be a positive to our relationship. But inevitably, please, no one expects free for all. There has to be some sort of management to that sort of visa process and that migration process.
Well, I wish we had more time, but we didn't even take your opinion on the tax on the tax policy reforms. Saying that Nigeria is trying to model its new reforms based on what you have in the UK with His Majesty's revenue and customs, doing almost all the work around tax in the UK, and it would have been nice to get what your thoughts are, but I guess we're totally out of time.
What I can say is that our economic dialogue with the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank, very positive. We know times are tough with people, and there's a good deal of difficulty with inflation and petrol prices. But I am personally optimistic that the country is going in the right directions. The reforms will pay off, and we have a very productive dialogue that when we're asked to share how the UK does it with the revenue and customs, or the way the Bank of England does it, we do respond as quickly as possible to requests from the Nigerians to share information. And we're learning a lot from working with our Nigerian partners here. And that's the benefit of having a strategic partnership. We can work across a broad front very productively.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's several grounds to cover, but we had to anchor at this point in time. We have to thank you for coming on. His Excellency Richard Montgomery, British High Commissioner to Nigeria, thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much, Chamberlain and Malping. Nice to see you again.
All right, guys, there you go. That wraps it up today. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain. So goodbye.
Thank you for your feedback. Hopefully we will be able to take them tomorrow. Thank you for watching. I'm Mal Belbin, yourself.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Do have a beautiful week ahead.